Welcome to the Books Between Friends podcast.
3 lifelong friends,
one shared obsession.
Books.
From epic fantasy to page-turning thrillers.
We dive into the stories we love
And the ones we just can't stop talking about.
So take a seat,
Grab a drink,
and get cozy.
All right, welcome back, book friends. Speaking of cozy, what is making you guys cozy these days? So for me, I just had a day off and it was a great day for me. I got to finally spend some time by the pool and I got to read all afternoon. So that is what has been making me feel cozy lately. Jen, what about you?
So I'm a little jealous because I was literally just telling you about how I miss our pool days back when I lived closer to you. But for me this week, like it's keeping me cozy, but it's also kind of like a little guilty pleasure. So I try really hard to keep wine night for the weekends where I drink red wine. But this week I've been having a glass or two every night. And I usually don't because of work, but that's been keeping me pretty cozy all week. I've been having a glass or two a night. It's been keeping me a little mellow. I love it. And I think I kind of needed it though. Like it's been kind of a rough week. So
Sometimes you just do. I think that's
yeah.
fair.
So I keep thinking, I'm like, should I drink wine this weekend? Because I've had so much already. We'll see. Ethan, what about you?
Oh my gosh. So I too had a day off today. And I have to tell you, like we've been talking about it, like the news just sucks right now. And
Yeah.
I want to be an involved citizen. I want to be an informed citizen, but I also need boundaries. And so what's been keeping me cozy and kind of keeping my mind off of the suckage is just reading, like just going back to our roots as a podcast and just reading. I have finished Queen of Shadows.
Yay!
And the time has come for the tandem read.
Yay!
Yes, I bought Empire
so
of
excited
Storms
for you.
and Tower of Dawn today. And that's what
Oh my
what
God.
the cashier said today too, as she was like, "Do I sense a tandem read?"
Yay!
And she was like, I'm so jealous and excited for you. Jealous because you get to read this for the first time, and excited because you get to read this for the first time.
Yes.
So she was very kind. But yeah, that's what's been keeping me cozy. And honestly, it's just necessary at this
Yeah.
point. So
Yeah.
I cannot tell you how
Totally.
happy I am that you just finished Queen of Shadows. That's probably up there on my favorites, like from the series. It's
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Same here.
I dig the series, and
It's so
I
good.
will freely admit when I was wrong. Like I was wrong to not want to read this series for so long, I guess, just because like I've already mentioned it before. Like I had just finished reading Shadow and Bone and I hated it, and it felt similar to me at that time, which is why I held off on Throne of Glass. But now that I'm back in it, like gosh, Aelin Galathynius
So
is
good.
one of
Yeah.
my favorite characters of all
Don't
time.
you? I told you.
Loving Manon.
Yep.
And all of the intricate like side characters and
Yeah.
their stories now. I
Yeah.
love Rowan.
So good.
Yes.
Yeah, it's really, really good.
Isn't it so good? Like when you read Throne of Glass, you really think it's about this like assassin, wanting to be the king's champion, and it goes from that to so much
So
more.
much more.
And I
Yeah.
think that's what I
Epic in
love about
scope,
the
yeah.
series. Yeah.
Totally.
That's
Yeah.
what I love about the series,
Well,
honestly.
I actually personally have some news on that front. So, back when we first read Throne of Glass, we read it in chronological order. So, that means Assassin's
Right.
Blade first.
Yeah.
And I just did not like Selena in that book
Yeah,
at
yeah.
all. Like, almost couldn't get through the book because of it, because of her attitude and like how just like her character was not
Her arrogance.
good for
Yeah,
me.
I can
Yeah,
totally
it's-
see that if you read that one first. Like,
Yeah.
I could
so-
totally see that.
Since I've been listening to Throne of Glass, I did it in publishing order. So I just finished Assassin's Blade and I'm appreciating it a lot more than before. And I think I'm actually going to update my review of it. I think I gave it a 3 at first, but I'm probably going to bump that up to a 5.
Yeah, actually, I say I'm rereading, but I'm also listening to them too, because I gave up on the fact of trying to physically read this series since I'm reading so many other books right now. But I just finished Crown of Midnight and I just started Assassin's Blade, and I am getting really annoyed with her. And it's funny because when I first read it, I didn't find her that annoying. I even told Stephanie, I'm like, she's fine, whatever. Like, what are you talking
No, I
about?
remember us like texting
We
about
were,
this. Like,
yeah.
I hate this girl. I
And I
can't
was
do
like, she's
this.
so
I
cool. What are you
almost
talking
didn't want
about?
to
Yeah.
finish it. Yeah.
But now I'm listening to it, I'm like, holy shit, like I can totally see where
She's
that
pretty bad.
arrogance and it's just like,
Yeah.
dude, like calm down. It's not that serious. And like, you're not that great. So it
The
was just
amount of
really
times she was
funny.
like, I'm Otterlin's assassin. Like,
Yeah.
Yes.
And it's
Yeah.
just so funny, like our perspective's changing now because like I
yeah.
loved reading it this first, but now I'm like, I am so glad I did not read this first this time around. Like, oh my gosh. I don't know. It's
Well,
really
I
funny.
think, yeah, I think too, you get to appreciate her character arc so much more
Totally.
Right.
when you read Throne of Glass first,
Yes.
and then you go to Assassin's Blade later.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. It's like a
man,
different
she has
person.
changed so much from where she came from.
Yeah.
You know, and so yeah, it's just really smart storytelling.
Yeah.
And
So
for
good. Yes.
anyone listening out there that, you know, maybe you've stuck in young adult for a while and you've been scared to tiptoe into adult fantasy, if you like epic fantasy, Throne of Glass is the perfect place to start and transition your way into
Absolutely.
like a more epic fantasy world.
Yeah.
Because Throne of Glass, like what Jen just said, like you do kind of assume that it's just going to be like this assassin story,
Mm-hmm.
but it opens up into such an epic universe. Maybe not as epic as, you know, like Lord of the Rings or Wheel of Time,
Right.
Sure.
but it is a good like starter or gateway series to get you to that point.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's just,
I
I can't,
1000% agree.
I don't usually get, like, everyone knows this about me by now, I don't give my 5 stars just willy-nilly, but every book in this series, minus Crown of Midnight,
Yeah.
has
Yeah, that
been
one's a little bit of a slug.
has been a 5-star read for me.
Yay!
Yeah, and I reserve those, so like that's probably
Yeah.
pretty telling for people.
I too am so jealous of you that this is your first
Same.
read through, and
Yeah,
I'm so
same.
excited for you at the same time. All right, you guys. So before we dive into this next part of our discussion on the Nightingale, I'm going to kick it over to Ethan for a quick spoiler warning and a summary of what we talked about last time.
Book friends. So before we get started, this is a spoiler warning. If you're listening to this episode, we are assuming you've read through chapter 30 of The Nightingale. So you have been warned. There are spoilers throughout this episode. Now, let's pivot back to our last episode. In our last episode, we followed Vianne and Isabelle as their worlds continue to unravel under the strain of World War II. Vianne trying to care for her daughter Sophie and her neighbors. She's facing increasing suspicion and judgment from her community because of her connection to Officer Beck that is stationed in her home. She receives some not so great news about her husband Antoine, who has become a prisoner of war at one of their camps in Germany and was forced to make some impossible decisions under pressure. And really her morality, her faith, and her friendships are put to the test. We compare that to Isabelle, right? Isabelle is stepping deeper into the world of the French resistance, and her boldness and bravery intensify as she takes on a new identity and joins efforts to aid downed Allied pilots. A dangerous journey across the Pyrenees Mountains proved her grit and marked a turning point in her growth as a character and her evolution from reckless and impetuous to resilient and strong. With both sisters walking separate but powerful paths through war-torn France, we see courage take many forms that are loud and quiet. From gathering secrets to whispered warnings in mountain crossings, these sisters were met with moments that tested their loyalty, reshaped their identities, and pushed Vianne and Isabelle both toward their growth. So now we're going to dive into some juicy topics for our discussion today.
All right, you guys. I'm so excited to talk about this section. As we predicted, I would say this part focused a lot more on Vianne's journey, and it was so good and also so sad at some points. So we start off in the summer of 1942. Isabelle has now helped 87 pilots cross the Pyrenees Mountains into Spain, which is amazing. But her contact at the British Embassy in Spain, Ian, tells her that to be careful and tries to get her to slow down because the Germans are now trying to infiltrate her route and trying to catch the Nightingale, but she doesn't want to slow down. She wants to continue doing this work at the same pace that she's been. So then she returns to Paris and meets with Anouk. She's another resistance member in Paris who tells her about a Nazi operation, and they're employing women for some type of clerical work related to this operation. So Levy, the leader of the resistance in Paris, has gotten Isabelle a position doing this job so she can try to figure out what they're doing. So she reports to the prefecture of police to do this job. And they take her to a table where they have several boxes full of cards, and they tell her to separate the names of foreign-born Jews into another box. And while she's doing this, she finds one with Levy's name on it, and that freaks her out. So she sneaks the card into her sleeve, and then she fakes being sick to get sent home. And then she goes to her dad's apartment, and there they're talking about what this could mean, why they might be doing this. And as they're discussing this, they notice buses pulling up to their building, and then someone slides a note under their door with a warning that the foreign-born Jews are about to be deported. So they go down to their neighbor Ruth Friedman's apartment and take her and her kids up into their apartment in that secret room where she hid that pilot a few chapters ago. And once they get Ruth and her kids up there, Isabelle decides that she's going to also try to save another one of their neighbors, Madame Wisniak, but she was too late and she sees them take her away. You know, it's starting what we knew was coming.
Yeah.
What did you guys think of this section?
You know, one thing that I actually forgot to write down, but it was like literally coming to mind as you were talking, was, you know, there were several times where she tried to like ask some of the French policemen, because one of the things that they really pointed out was that it was the French rounding up the Jews, not the Germans. And
Right.
so she kept asking like the French policemen, like, what's going on? What's happening? And, you know, I think like at one point, one of them even looked scared and worried and was like trying to tell her, like, get out of here before you get in trouble. And like kept trying to protect her by telling her to go away. And it happened again, I think, here whenever she was trying to help the neighbor who, it was too late for her, but she was trying to help the children. And, you know, one of the French policemen kept telling, like, you just need to get out. Like, just really trying to protect her and help her, because I know they probably didn't agree with what was going on, but they were under orders by the Germans to do that, right?
Yeah.
So like I did notice like that really kind of picked up, or I really noticed that part when I was reading, was like they made the French do it, and then some of them like were trying to kind of protect some of those non-Jew people to make sure that they didn't get mixed up in this, because it was going to be bad for them. But I do love that like Isabelle and her dad kind of get like temporarily reunited, because it talks about like her coming back home after months of being away. And, you know, it even says like, it felt good to be here again with him after months away. And like, it just shows that she still just wants that love from her dad.
Yeah.
And I think that she's finally getting kind of more of that with her dad, just having more time with him, more understanding.
So they're working together now.
Yeah. And I love that. And I love that they're still helping in any way that they can by trying to hide the Jews, knowing that they could probably get killed for that, you know?
Yeah, totally. And if not as his daughter, then at least as equals and colleagues, right? Like he probably can't, like he probably doesn't even want to, because the guilt would probably just be crushing. Even try to make that reconnection between father and daughter.
Right.
But yeah, that part really struck out to me as well. And gosh, I just felt awful for Wisniak, and because Isabelle is trying to plead with her, like, let me take your child.
Yeah.
Like let me take your child. And Wisniak was just like, you sweet young naive girl. Like when you're a mother, you'll understand, but you can't part with your child.
Right.
I'm like, gosh, if you only knew what was coming for you.
Right.
Like, gosh, it's heartbreaking.
Right.
And this is the start of this section, which just goes to show like where we're heading later.
Yeah.
But I'm happy that at least she was able to get to the Friedmans, but we still see a little bit of that recklessness with Isabelle, right? And what's dangerous is that she's using that recklessness as an excuse for, you know, it's courage, you know, like she's being brave to try to get to this next family before
they get there.
It's like yes, it's like a race against the clock.
Yeah.
And she just doesn't make it. And again, like Steph has said before, she just gets lucky, right?
Yeah.
She gets
Yes.
lucky because this French officer is telling her, you need to leave.
Yeah.
Like, you
Right.
need to leave
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
Someone
so,
else
yeah,
might
it's-
have rounded her up too, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
So,
true.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's an emotional tone immediately off the bat.
Totally. All right, so then we get back to Vianne and Caribou, and she is now sharing her rations with Rachel because the Jewish families are no longer allowed to shop alongside of everybody else. They have to wait until the end of the day when there's nothing left for them. So she goes to Rachel's after collecting her rations and splits them with her. And so she's been doing this now. And so one day, Beck warns them about the deportations of foreign born Jews, and she tells them that Rachel should hide. So Vianne takes her and the kids to try to escape by trying to get to the free zone. And they take a path that Beck tells them is not as heavily guarded or watched. And so once they get there, they start lining up to try to get past this checkpoint. And unfortunately, as that's happening, one of the German, I don't know if it was a policeman or soldier that was at that checkpoint, just starts firing into the crowd of people. And so Rachel and Sarah try to run back into the tree line where they had come from, but Sarah got shot in the chest when that happened. So they were carrying Ari in a wheelbarrow, and Vianne quickly took him out of the wheelbarrow and put Sarah in, and then handed Ari over to Rachel, and they ran back home or back to Vianne's. And they get there, and Sarah passed away from her injuries at that point. And Rachel, of course, is in shock. So she's not really processing this just yet. And Vianne springs into action. She says, I will go bury her, but you need to hide in the cellar. And so she makes sure that Ari and Rachel get into the cellar, and then she goes and buries her. And so the next day, Vianne wakes up and she goes and gets her rations and notices that nothing seems different in town. So that's weird. But later in the day, she goes and checks on Ari and Rachel in the cellar. They're doing fine, but Rachel says that she needs some diapers for Ari and she would like to take a bath. So they decide to walk over to Rachel so that they can, get those diapers for Rachel to be able to take a bath. But unfortunately, when they get there, a policeman drives up to her home and asks Rachel if she is Rachel de Champlain, and she says, yes, you know who I am. And so he arrests her, and Vianne refuses to leave, even though the policeman tells her to go home. She gets in the car with them, and he takes them both to the train station where they are deporting the foreign-born Jews. So once Rachel realizes what's about to happen to her, she quickly hands Ari over to Vianne and begs her to take care of him, and she does. So then she takes Ari with her back home.
So much to unpack, right?
This is it, you guys. Yeah.
Yeah, it's happened. And I wish, I don't wish, it feels like we got cheated a little bit to actually be able to grieve. And so I even wrote in my notes, I was like, it feels uncomfortable to keep on reading without sitting with the moment.
Right.
That this child just died.
Mm.
And it doesn't shy away with describing what it looked like. Vianne describes it as her chest was just full of bullet holes, of this machine gun that was just let loose in this crowd of people, innocent people, right? And so infuriating first and foremost. And then it's just heartbreaking. You see Rachel just go in shock, like you were saying, she's in shock. She's not able to fully grieve and grasp the situation. And then what's even more heartbreaking is that now she has her son, and she is forced to sit with that grief in a cellar, not even in her home.
Alone.
And with her, and she doesn't know if she's going to get caught or anything like that. I can only imagine what was running through her brain. I was afraid actually that she might take it as an opportunity to end her life and her son's life, as a loss of hope.
Yeah.
I was praying that wasn't coming in the next episode or in the next chapter as I kept on turning the page. But then I felt even worse. However Isabelle is lucky, Vianne and her friends are just as unlucky, right? Because it just so happened as a matter of like awful fate that this Paul is his name. There's a special
Yeah.
place in hell for him.
Oh my gosh,
Like
yes.
their French, fellow citizen
Yeah.
is
Right.
this Nazi sympathizer and collaborator and working with the Nazis and she was like, you know who I am,
Right.
pig,
Right.
like you know who I am.
It's their neighbor.
And he just takes her, and it's just awful. And so like, they're incredibly unlucky just as much as Isabel is lucky. It's just awful, awful, awful.
I didn't even know where to start here because I was just like, this happens and that happens and that happens and that happens, right?
Right.
I will say that I agree that this was very emotional. There was a lot of mixed emotions, but before I kind of talk about like what happens with Sarah and Rachel, I want to mention this moment because it kind of changes perspective for me of Beck. And that to me, that's like a little important, not that important, but it's important to me. So before we kind of got into like Isabel and learning about all the saves that she has done in the last 8 months, like there was a little tiny section on Vianne and Sophie and how Sophie almost dies. And she's really sick. She has this fever that won't break and she has no medicine, no way to help her. And one day Beck shows up with the bottle of medicine of exactly what she needs that will help her, get better. And like that just kind of like shifted my perspective on Beck a little bit because the last episode I felt like he wasn't really helping them, even though he said he wanted to help them. And it kind of just felt like he was taking advantage of Vianne here. But now he's actually helping them because it also gets revealed that he's been bringing food home for them. And it's not in big amounts because I don't think he can afford to sink that much out without there being some kind of suspicion within his rank, right?
Right.
But it's enough for them to not let them starve to death. And so I was honestly really, really surprised, but so relieved when he actually went and warned Vianne about Rachel. I was like, whoa, that just happened. Whoa, he just told her. I didn't think he was ever going to turn on his own people like that to try to help the person he's living with, right? And so I kind of feel like Vianne was very hesitant. And I would be too, right? I wouldn't know if I should trust him or not on what he's saying. Should I trust what he's saying? Should I trust his words? So that was just all very confusing to me too. I think I felt like what Vianne was feeling because I just literally talked about how much I hated this man. And now you're helping and you're being a good person and you're doing all of these things. I was just like, whoa.
It's confusing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just a lot. It's just a whiplash of emotion here. I don't think I've cried as much as I have when I read that. Like I literally had to stop reading when I was reading about like, especially because Sarah's last words were like, tell Sophie, and then boom, she dies. And so they have just lost everything here. I mean, especially Sophie, who's trying to put up a brave face too. She just lost her best friend.
Yeah.
Rachel just lost her daughter, and they're still in danger. We don't know what's happening next.
Right.
And then on top of that, she gets deported. I'm like, it was so heartbreaking because they were so close, y'all, so close. If she would have just stayed in the cellar a little bit longer, like
I know.
That's what I kept thinking. I'm like, if you would have just stayed there for a little bit longer, you would have been safe. Maybe, right? We don't know, but. So devastating, just so devastating. I'm
glad you brought up the pace of this, Ethan, earlier, because I also felt that like, oh my gosh, like one thing after another, like one devastation after another. And not just for Rachel too, for Vianne to be trying to save her best friend and her family. And she couldn't, like that would break somebody. And like you said, Jen, if they had just stayed in the cellar a little bit longer, maybe it wouldn't have happened.
That's what I kept thinking. I'm like, if you would have just stayed, if you would have just listened.
And like we've all said before, this unfortunately is what it takes for Vianne to break. And I honestly don't think that she would have, right? Like, because we're starting, this moment shows that her gears in her brain are starting to turn, right? They're like resistance is starting to poke in her brain. And I don't think she would have had she been able to sit with it and grieve with it. If she would have probably reverted back, but life is not allowing her to at this point. And so she's just keeping on going. Eventually, I think that probably leads to some of the decisions that she made that we're going to talk about later.
I didn't mention this before we started discussing, but like, so now that she's got Ari, she needs to hide him. And of course, Beck still lives there. which is really dangerous. You know, we don't know if he would turn her in, but when Beck comes back and sees Ari with her, she asks, "Are you going to turn me in?" And at this moment, he says, like, I mean, French-born Jewish children are not being deported right now, but he tells her eventually they will. And they also have a moment here where they almost kiss. Y'all remember that?
Yeah.
And I was so glad that Vianne finally came to her wits at, you know, like at the last second and pushed him away. But I could see her almost falling for it, you know?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I totally called it.
Right.
Yeah, you
I
did.
totally
You did.
called this. I was like, I knew there was going to be something between Beck and Vianne. I freaking knew it. And well, and I think that she just started like she's been warming up to him because of the fact that like not only did he save Sophie, he's been saving them from starvation. Like he's been kind of like that person that she can sort of rely on that's been keeping them safe because let's be honest, like anybody could have taken up her house and she ended up with an actual nice German, you know, if you can even call him that, but she's gotten pretty lucky with who is stationed at her house. And so he came and gave the forged papers that were needed for Ari to become Daniel so that she could keep him. He bring those papers so that she could keep him. And so that was really surprising to me because I was like, that is really dangerous for him to do that. Like he could get killed by doing that. And he did it for her. And so I remember when I was reading their moment between them when they were going to kiss or almost kiss, you know, she kind of left it with her inner monologue that said, it would have been dangerous for us to kiss, but it's even more dangerous that we want to.
Right. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So she's kind of self-aware now that this is kind of a pattern for her. She kind of finds someone to depend on instead of, you know, resisting.
Right.
Yeah. It's so interesting. This section, I fell in love with Kristin Hannah's writing. Like, I think she is incredibly clever in the way that she writes because I think Beck and Vianne are just mirrored, right? Like, they are the same character. They are just completely mirrored. And Beck, you can see both of them struggling internally with their decisions that they make. And Beck is trying to reconcile his country doing these awful things, but yet he's trying to maintain a sense of duty. Right? Like, I don't think he's a terrible person. He's just a person that is coming to terms with the fact that his country is corrupt.
Right.
And is not good. And Vianne is also not a bad person, even though like she finds some kind of way to sympathize with Beck, right? Like that doesn't make her a bad person. It doesn't make her a bad person for wanting to be safe, right? It just like it's frustrating sometimes to read. But I think they are the same character, and it points to the fact that Vianne is growing while Beck is not really.
Right.
And you do see they do have a few moments throughout this section where Beck is kind of questioning the morality of what he's being asked to do and like what his country is doing to these people. But, you know, thankfully, he does later bring Vianne a forged birth certificate for Ari, renaming him Daniel Antoine Mauriac so that she can claim that he's a nephew of hers that she decided to take in. And so now she won't have to like keep him hidden in the house. That, you know, she can claim that he's not a Jewish child, that he's her family. So she's got a way to keep him safe now, thankfully. All right, so then we fast forward a few months into October of 1942, and back in Paris, Isabelle meets with Anouk again to exchange some resistance letters, and Anouk tells her about an upcoming meeting in Caribou. And so on the day of the meeting in Caribou, Isabelle checks into the Hotel Bellevue where Henry works. And we find out that the hotel has actually been one of the main safe houses on her route that she takes to take the pilots to the Pyrenees Mountains and into Spain. And so she gives them some money from the British allies that are helping them do this work. And then Henry warns her again that the Nazis are now hunting down female resistance members, and they're especially looking for the Nightingale. But she just kind of dismisses his warning, and she asks about Vianne. And he tells her that she lost her job some time ago. And she asks, you know, so how is she surviving without her job? And he also tells her that there are rumors about Vianne and Beck. So, it's not just happening within the home, but people are speculating about what might be going on between them. So later on her way to the meeting, Isabel witnesses an American plane crash and she runs to go and find the pilot of the plane. And she and some other resistance members find him and they're trying to figure out what to do with him. And then Isabel suggests the cellar at Vianne's house under the barn. And so they take him over there. So the resistance members leave Isabel with the pilot in the cellar to go to the meeting that they're supposed to go to. And the pilot unfortunately dies soon after that. So now it's just Isabel with this dead pilot in the cellar. And then we go back to Vianne the next morning. Beck comes home and he's angry that they were not able to find this pilot. They have been searching all night and they couldn't find him. And so he knows that that means that someone's keeping him, like hiding him. And, he's frustrated and she's just like, oh, well, I don't know anything about that. Right now, she doesn't know anything about that. But later she notices that the barn door is like open. So then she's like, at first she's thinking like, oh, maybe Rachel's back. Maybe she's trying to hide. And she goes up there to check the cellar and she finds Isabel down there. And she is furious with Isabel because she notices the pilot is with her too. And so she's furious that she brought this danger to her house. And, knowing that Beck lives with her and that he is going to be out there trying to find this pilot. So later that night, they get into an argument and she tells Isabel to leave and that she is no longer welcome in her home. And so later that night, Beck comes back and he still has not found the pilot and he is getting desperate because it's been made clear that it is on him to find this pilot or else we don't know what might happen to him if he doesn't. And so he starts searching her house and she's like, I don't, know what you're talking about. I don't have him. And unfortunately, he remembers that when he warned them about Rachel needing to hide, she mentioned something about a cellar. So he goes out to the barn and finds the cellar. And as he's opening the cellar door, gunshots go off and Beck shoots, Isabel also shoots, but as he's finding the door, Vianne actually grabbed a shovel in the barn and also hits him in the back of the head at the same time as this all happens, and he falls and dies. So then shortly after that, the other resistance members that had helped Isabel bring the pilot into the cellar come and find this chaos going on. And so they decide, okay, Gaetan is going to take Isabel to safety in the nearest safe house in the free zone. And then Henry and Dieter are going to get rid of Beck's bike and his body. And Vianne insists that she's going to go with Isabel and Gaetan because she wants to make sure that they make it into safety.
Yes, that is so much because it's also revealed at that time that, yes, they killed Beck, but Beck's shot that he did found its way into Isabel. So Isabel has been shot. I
forgot to mention that. Yeah.
Yeah, and so that's where the high stakes kind of come in here. This was a lot, right? Like this was a lot to process. I was so incredibly frustrated with Isabel because I was like, you're being reckless again and rash. And you didn't even stop to check to see if the guy was injured. Like,
right.
It was later revealed that he had like a really big blood stain on his chest. If she had just taken the time, I mean, not to sound harsh, but he's not worth it, right? Like he's going to die.
It was a lost cause. Yeah.
Yeah. And so like, just leave him there. Don't bring Sophie into it, right? Don't bring Vianne into it. But she did anyway, because she didn't think through it. And so, yes, Beck ended up dying here. I can't, like, it's sad, of course. Like, no death is like a happy event. But right. I'm not overly sad about this death. I did call it though. Like he was the one that was going to die. And so
you did call it,
I'm sad for his family, right? Because he has kids, he has his wife. But I feel even if he had survived somehow, his character, I don't think would have grown the same way Vianne would have grown, because I feel
Hmm.
like he would have returned to Germany. And there's like studies in history on this, right? Like Nazi Germany soldiers that returned, they kept on saying they were just following orders. They were just following orders, and they were haunted for the rest of their lives with the stuff that they had done.
Yeah.
And I feel like he would have
Hmm.
been one of them, even though he was not.
Yeah.
He said, he's like, I didn't use the whip, that was at the place where Rachel was getting deported. He's like,
Right.
I didn't do that. Like, he was trying to separate himself as much as he could.
Right.
But he was ultimately, still part of it. And I don't think he would have survived that mentally after the war.
Mm.
But yeah, Isabel getting shot in the process is not something I saw coming. I did think after, like, I read that she crumpled to the floor, it's like, oh my gosh, she died.
I thought so
I thought
too.
that
Yeah.
might have been confirmation that the older sister was Vianne, or the older woman was Vianne.
Mm-hmm.
And, she would have taken that opportunity to get the trunk out of the cellar and hightail it with Sophie and Daniel. And I was like, if only she had been that smart, right? Like to get
Yeah.
out of there, like go with her sister. Because, yeah, I was frustrated with Vianne at that point. I was like, yes, you're being, well, you're brave. Well, just go with your sister. But
Right.
I was very proud of Vianne nonetheless, because she goes up to Gaetan and she was like, if you don't take good care of her, I'm going to kill you. Like
Yeah.
she presents a little bit of Isabel here,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
I don't even think we can say Isabel anymore. Like she's being like Isabel. I think she's just being a Rossignol, she's being a
Yeah.
Nightingale,
Yeah.
right? Like it's taken a long time, but it's here. It's here. Like
Right.
she's starting to own it.
Yeah.
Totally.
No,
And
I
the
agree.
way she like took that shovel too, she like instantly was like, I gotta do something because she
Yeah.
knew he
Yeah.
was gonna
Yeah.
find Isabel.
Exactly. No, I agree that this is one of those chapters that were so much. I actually reread this maybe 2 or 3 times because I had to go back and like, I didn't want to reread the other chapters because of how sad it was, but this one
Yeah.
I did just because a lot happened. Like, there's a lot happening between Vianne and Beck. There's a lot happening with Beck internally. There was a lot happening with Isabel, and when I first read this, I thought that this was the moment Isabel would get caught. So like you mentioned, Ethan, she had just been, no, I think Stephanie mentioned it. She had been warned twice now that they're looking for the Nightingale. And both times she keeps like, I'm fine. No, I'm fine. Like I got this. They're not going to catch me. And they're even telling her the Nazis are disguising themselves as fallen airmen just to try to catch
Right.
her. So like when I read that she had witnessed that plane go down and that she immediately went to go look for him, I'm like, here's her recklessness coming
This
in,
is it.
right? Yeah. She's about to get caught. They literally just told her that they're disguising themselves as fallen airmen to catch the Nightingale. And then what does she do? She goes running after it. And so to your point, if she would have just bothered to look really quick, she could have saved herself this whole freaking headache, right? And
Right.
so I was really upset with Isabel too. And I felt for Vianne when she got really upset at her sister for bringing in that danger to her house. Like, you didn't stop to think about us. You didn't stop to think about the captain living with us. You didn't stop to think about what would happen if they caught you in my house. Like, what were
Yeah.
you thinking, And
Yeah.
so she does get caught. And so I was holding my breath the entire time, but also just really proud for Vianne for finally sticking up for her sister, right? Because even though she does kind of feel whatever she does for Beck, like, this is still her sister. This is still her family. And like, she did not hesitate to grab the shovel and like
Yeah.
hit him over with it. Like, she did not hesitate. She was panicking all the way up to the
Mhm.
moment, right? Trying to
Yeah.
get him to turn around, because I think that she knew that she was going to have to do something to Beck. And like, I think that's why
Right.
she was panicking, because she was like, he's going to catch her. I'm going to have to do something about him because she is my sister and I'm not going to let her get caught.
Yeah. And they even argue afterwards where Vianne is like, I killed him. And Isabel's like,
Nope.
no, I shot
No,
him.
yeah.
And it's like, who cares? He's dead.
Yeah,
We need
he's
to do
dead.
something.
Yeah, it's a problem because he's a
Yeah.
captain.
Doesn't matter who
Yeah.
did it.
And that was the other thing too, that like Vianne was really upset with Isabel about. It's like, look what you made me do. Like, now we have this dead captain. They're going to come looking for him. And now I have to figure out what to do with him. And so I was a little sad for Vianne over Beck. I wasn't sad for Beck, but like I mentioned before, like, she got lucky when it came to who stayed at her house. She was
Yeah.
lucky with Beck. And so now it's like, what's gonna happen? And to your point, Ethan, I know you were saying why didn't she just run away with Isabel, but like that would have made her guilty, and it would have made her
That's
look
true.
guilty, and it would have made the Germans go after her just that much harder. And she has
Yeah.
two children to think about here. Like that would have been hard to escape with two children, two adults, like trying to figure out where to stay, trying to keep themselves safe, trying to keep themselves fed. Like I don't know. She was put in yet another tough situation where she didn't know what to do, right? And so she ended up
Yeah.
staying. It
Yeah.
was a lot, man.
I Yeah, this
Yeah.
I've been fairly vocal about how I feel about Vianne. Just like I've been incredibly frustrated with her, but I think that makes this moment a really great payoff because like you finally get to see this huge, huge step in growth,
Right.
and it's a turning point for both sisters, I think, right? Because Vianne is starting like this is her moment where she's like, "Oh, no, I'm part of this. Like there's no running away from it, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm in this and I'm going now that I'm going to do the I'm going to fight however I can." And I think this is a turning point for Isabel because I think up until this time she's thought she's invincible.
Right.
And this is a moment where it is clearly telling her you are not.
Yes.
Right.
And your death could affect so many people. So stay
Right.
alive, if anything, just for you want to be alive yourself, but also for the people that depend on you.
Right.
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 So yeah, and it's just a really like I loved this moment. It was like I'm not sad. I mean, I don't love like the fact that he's not breathing anymore, but
Sure.
it's just a huge moment of growth, and I loved it. I loved reading this. I was like, oh, this is so
Yeah.
cool.
Well, I
It's big
guess,
for both sisters, I think.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that it was necessary for Isabel to be shot only because I think she was getting to the point where they were about to catch her. So this made her
Hmm.
have to
Yeah.
sit back and stop running, the people across the Pyrenees Mountains. So like that forced her, because sometimes whenever like you get sick and your body's telling you like you need to take a rest because you're running your body ragged. And so like when people get sick, like that's the time they probably needed to rest. And so this is kind
Yeah.
of like the same thing with Isabel. She got shot so that she could rest, so that she could not get caught, because that's exactly where it was heading,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's a bit
Yeah.
ironic that it takes Beck's death for Vienne to fully like realize into this. Well, we don't know what's to come with Vienne, but
Hmm.
you can see that it's a turning point for her, right? Like,
Right.
but
Yeah.
I think Beck was the person that was tying her to her old life, right? Like he was almost like a stand-in for Antoine.
Hmm.
Yeah.
But now that he's gone, there's no reason for that anymore.
Yeah.
Right.
And
It's all
so
on her shoulders
it's
now.
truly a turning
Yeah.
point. Yeah.
Yeah. Good point.
Yeah, that's a great point because
Yeah.
like Beck was keeping them alive, and
Yeah.
so now she's gonna have to figure out how to do that on her own.
Yep.
And I
That's
think
true.
she's going
Yeah.
to surprise herself.
Yeah. Okay, so now we get another chapter in Oregon in 1995 with the woman, and she is looking at the invitation that she got to this Passeurs reunion in honor of the Nightingale. And as she's looking at it, she gets a phone call from someone in France asking if she's going to be at the reunion. And she tells them no and hangs up, but then later she impulsively goes ahead and books a flight to Paris. And in the taxi on her way to the airport, she calls her son Julian to tell him, but she gets his voicemail, so she leaves him a message telling him that she's going to be in Paris for the next 2 days. And she also says that she should have told him the truth, whatever that means. So why do you guys think she at first didn't really want to go to the reunion? Like she felt like she shouldn't be there. She didn't want to go.
When I was reading it, I think before we didn't know when they were talking about the invitation to this reunion, they didn't talk about who it was honoring, right? And so I love that we got a little bit more information here where it's like, oh, we're honoring the Nightingale. And I was like, oh, well, this is Isabel, right? Because it even mentions like she has like this old woman has her inner monologue and says they want the Nightingale, but that's not who they're gonna get. And so like that's kind of where I was like, okay, Isabel, is that you speaking?
I think that Kristin might be writing it this way because she wants to present like it may be Vianne. I think it's like a red herring, honestly, that just to make us think that
Mm-mm.
it could be Vianne, because we know by the way Vianne is written and her inner dialogue that she has with herself that she's not going to take credit for someone else's stuff. And so I think that might be a
Mm.
way to impress upon that this could be Vianne, that she doesn't want to take credit for something that someone else did, especially her sister that's not here anymore.
Well,
So, yeah. So go ahead. I completely interrupted you.
no, no, no. I'm glad you said that because that's gonna like help my next, I guess, like my next point, right? I still think it's Isabel because she's talking whenever she's thinking about like she should have told the truth to Julian, right? She should have told him the truth. She talks about how Julian sees her. And so she
Yeah.
says like that she's kind of like this submissive, weak person who like always just goes along with whatever her husband had to say and like never really put up a fight on anything. And she just always did what the other person thought. And she was like, and that's she said something about, that's a person that I led them to believe was me, but that's not really who I am. And so to me, I'm thinking Isabel, fiery, she's fiery Isabel, who always, says what she's thinking, always does what she wants. She acts impulsively, she acts recklessly. And so like, if she's talking about who she used to be, and now she's become this person that she's just kind of letting everybody else kind of take the reign on everything. That's why I think it's still Isabel, because of that little inner monologue itself, where she's like, I led them to believe I was somebody who I'm really not. And then the whole part with the Nightingale, oh, they're expecting the Nightingale, but that's not who they're going to get, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm with you, Jen. That's where I took it. Because she did have that inner monologue of like, Julian doesn't know the real me, kind of is what I took from that.
Yeah.
And so that's what I thought maybe she meant by the truth of who she was, like this
Right.
impulsive, strong person. And like the last chapter we got from them, remember when Julian saw that the invitation was about World War II, he asked, "Oh, is that for Dad?" And she said, "Of course, men always think war is about them."
Oh, that's
So
right. Yeah.
yeah, I'm thinking Isabel still also because of that.
Yeah. And if I'm thinking outside of this, Isabel is the one of the two sisters that already speaks English. So
Mm,
if
That's
if
okay.
she's
right.
passing off as like
Yeah,
really good English, she would have had to have had a head start
right.
in that language already. Like, so, and it's not mentioned that he has any siblings thus far. So unless something terrible happens to Sophie and Daniel, it's a better chance in Isabel's favor.
Right.
Hmm.
So yeah.
That's true. Good point. Great points all around. All right, so now we go back to October 1942, and while on their way to the safe house with Isabel in a coffin,
Okay.
Vianne opens up to Gaetan about their father's abandonment when they were kids. And so they get to have that little moment. And at the end, I thought this was funny. Vianne tells Gaetan not to hurt Isabel or she would kill him. So I saw that as a moment of her like inner Isabel coming out. And he promised that he wouldn't and asked her to be brave for Isabel and said that she was going to have to continue to be brave to get through this war. So then later, Isabel wakes up in the safe house with Gaetan and she remembers the fight that she had with Vianne, and starts to feel guilty for bringing the pilot to her home and, putting them in danger the way that she did. And then later, she talks to Gaetan and they start talking about their feelings for each other. And it's been alluded that they both seem to always ask about each other. Other resistance members have noticed it as well. But Gaetan still continues to insist that they cannot be together. And Isabel tells him that her only regret in this war would be not being with him. And then soon after that, they do finally allow themselves to be together. And they spend the next week together. Yeah. I was trying to be mature about it, Ethan, but yes,
Oh gosh, no,
it's like
why?
that. So anyway, they finally do come together and they spend the next week together getting to know each other and kind of just forgetting all of their responsibilities with the resistance and the war while Isabel is healing from her gunshot wound. But all knowing that they will soon have to go back to, their work with the resistance and what they've been doing to get through this war. So that is the update on Isabelle. Thankfully, she made it through. And so back in Caribou, Vianne gets questioned by Officer Von Richter. I didn't even try his first name, you guys.
This is fine.
But yeah. So policemen come and get her from her house and take her to the town hall. And Von Richter questions her about Beck. And she was really clever and lied to them and just said, Beck was really upset about not finding the pilot and he was getting drunk that night. And then he decided to leave to go look for the pilot and he never came back. And that's all I know. And Von Richter just totally bought the lie. But then he said, well, I guess, now that Beck's not staying at your house, I'll be staying at your house.
Yay.
Yeah. So anyway, days later, Ian still has not gotten word about Isabelle. And she's having nightmares about Beck's death and about them taking away Daniel. And, she's worried. And she's now been sleeping in what used to be Beck's old room downstairs with the kids because Von Richter decided to take the largest room upstairs. And one morning, Von Richter announces to her that he was going to be hosting some officers for dinner that night and demands that she cook for them. And also during this encounter, we find out that he brews actual coffee every morning, which is something that no French people can get. And he forbids her from having any of the coffee. And at one point, he even pours a whole pot of coffee down the drain in front of her. So, this guy is cruel. He's awful, just not a good person. So unfortunately, Vianne is now stuck with this guy. So let's talk about the differences here and now the situation that she finds herself in now that Beck is gone with Von Richter.
Well, let's see. I think Von Richter needs to fall down a flight of stairs, neck first.
Sorry.
And then once he gets down to the bottom of the stairs, I need a pit of hell to open up where it can swallow him. Because I am not a fan. And like I said earlier that, no death is a happy one. But if we actually get to read his death, then I will be just fine and maybe even celebrate. Because I despise this type of person. One that just relishes in the abuse and pain of others. But he doesn't forbid her by explicitly telling her that, no, you can't have the coffee. He just forbids her by, he has a cup of coffee and then pours the rest out rather than offering it, right? My blood started boiling. But on the other hand, yay for Isabelle.
Finally.
I know, right? This has been a long time coming. Geit, we can't get away from the brooding man, even when we're not reading fantasy.
Thank you.
Right?
Yes.
This is, you're overplayed. Shh, guy, just let it happen. Let it happen. It's going to happen.
She's literally throwing herself at you, and he's trying to
taking her
resist
towel off. I was like, come on, play a little hard to get.
She didn't have time for that, Ethan. Okay.
Well, yeah,
I know that is true. She says it explicitly. Yeah. We don't have time. Mm-hmm. If anything, getting shot has told me how much time we don't have.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah.
Because she even says I usually make them chase me or something like that. And I was just
right. Yeah. She said in a different world, I would have made him chase me or something like that.
And that was the night they conceived Julian.
Shut up. I mean, actually.
Not confirmed. Yeah.
I know.
So I'm so glad, Ethan, that you said the whole brooding things. I was so annoyed with him here. I was like, dude.
Yes.
Are you kidding me? Because he even says, he asked Isabelle, are you going to regret this? And she said no, immediately, right? And he goes, I'm already regretting this. I'm like, dude, shut the fuck up. Just enjoy the moment that you have a naked girl in front of you.
Right.
I was...
And he's just I'm an ex-prisoner and whatever else he called himself. What
she
else
doesn't
do
care.
I need to say? Literally, yeah.
And then literally another part that I was just really upset about was she has been trying to kind of sneak in moments where they're getting to know each other, and she's telling him about things that she used to do as a kid with her family. We were too poor to do that. Must be nice.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me, dude? I was just so over him. And the fact that she chose this dude to lose her virginity to, I'm like, really,
I like Henry.
Isabelle?
I thought Henry was a good one.
Thank you. I think Henry was a better fit.
Team Henry.
Yes.
Yes.
I said, really, Isabelle? This is the man that you want to give everything to. He's not only is he
Yeah.
like pushing you away, he is like, woe is me about everything. Like
But
you're a
it's kind of
weenie,
like her
dude.
daddy issues coming out, right? That's
Yeah.
Yeah,
how
I
I
guess so.
interpreted it.
Yeah.
I think Mother Superior is the character that marks Vianne's growth, and
Mm,
Geit is the character that marks Isabel's growth, right? Like every time she comes back to him, she realizes something else about herself.
hmm.
And so I don't know. Like I'm a little frustrated. Not a little. I'm a lot frustrated with Guy. Like shut up.
Yes.
Like
Please.
enjoy what you have. To
Enough.
Isabel's point, you could not have much
Yeah.
time together, so enjoy it,
I
right? Rather
guess,
than be
Yeah.
pissy about it.
yeah, I guess the only area of growth I saw in Isabel here is that she's coming to terms with you don't, every day could be your last, right? Like, I think
Yeah.
that's the only thing that I really took away from this because everything else, I was honestly, to me, this was not, and maybe it wasn't meant to be a romantic moment because, you're in the middle of war, you could potentially die the
Yeah.
next day. So this isn't my little, like feel good romance moments that I get in my book. So, like, I get that. But I was a little annoyed that that's what was happening here, that it wasn't that feel good moment. It wasn't a moment where I was like, oh, I'm so happy for Isabel. Oh, yay, they're so in love. I was just annoyed the whole
No.
time and I didn't like that. I don't know.
Maybe this is the truth that the elder woman has to reveal to Julian is that your father is actually not your father. It's Geit, like.
Ooh.
But what you said
See?
earlier, going back to the elderly woman for just a sec, I know we're not in that section, but what also could be another point in favor for Isabel is you said when you were describing that phone call with that French person that was calling to make sure she got the invitation right or to ensure that she was coming, you said that she aggressively scheduled
Right.
flight, and I was like, that's a point in favor for Isabel because that was impulsive. I
Yeah.
read that too, and I
I
was
so
like,
too.
yours that was really impulsive. You said no, like, oh, I'm gonna get
Yeah.
on a
She's just
plane.
gonna show
Yeah.
up.
All right, so that's what I thought with the whole Isabel moment. I want to talk about I want to share my thoughts on Von Victor and everything that's going on. And so even before I read about this moment between them where, he was going to make himself at home at her house, like I kept thinking back to Beck, like she was just so lucky with Beck, right?
Yeah.
And then I get to this point and I'm like, see, I knew it. I knew it could be worse. And here we are. Nothing against Vianne. This is not her fault, obviously. But this is just confirms my thinking on like how lucky she was with Beck, right? Because when she's being questioned by him, he searches her for any weapons
And feels her
and
up.
feels her
Yeah.
and gropes
Gross.
her. And it was just so
Gross.
disgusting to me. And then like he even makes a comment that says, oh, I would have never left a beautiful woman like you behind, when she tells him
Yuck.
that Beck
Yeah.
left or whatever. And so the minute I read, I'm going to be living there, my skin felt like I was just like, oh my
Same.
God. Like I felt like my
Yeah.
skin, there was something crawling
Same.
all over me. My stomach was hurting. I was just really grossed out. And like immediately my head went to the minute he gets there, he's going to take advantage of her and force himself on her.
I
And
thought so
that,
too.
Yep.
and I'm going to
Yep.
tell you right now, that is something I cannot read, y'all. If this happens,
Mhm.
I will not read that chapter because I
Mhm.
cannot tolerate men that do that, I mean, I'm not saying I can tolerate death because obviously I can't either, but I just cannot read about that. And so the fact that that's kind of what this is foreshadowing, because unfortunately it is
Yeah.
talking about, like, he does talk about her beauty a lot. And we kind of do talk about his, like, how cruel he is. Like, it kind of makes me sick, honestly.
Yeah.
But
Agreed.
I hated the fact that like he is being so cruel with their food too, because like you said, the coffee thing
Right.
where he just poured out the coffee. There was another night where like he took all the leftovers and gave it to the chickens, y'all.
Right. Yes.
Like
Knowing that they're starving.
yes, knowing
Yeah.
that these three children are not, or the three people are not eating. Like
Yeah, like these chickens have more value than you as people do, right?
exactly.
Like that's what that statement is.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, and then actually, I don't know if that comes up later, but yeah. So I hate this guy. I hate this guy, and
Yeah.
and it's more so than what I felt for Beck. Like I hate this guy, y'all. Like oh
Yeah.
Yeah. We know
Yeah.
he's
I
not
mean, because
good.
you immediately know where he stands and who he is, like
exactly.
as a character.
Yeah.
And what I also fear that moment that they are heavily hinting and foreshadowing
Yeah.
at, because at this time, and even today, right? Like if that does happen to a woman, a lot of women will not come forward,
Right.
right? And especially during this time, what
Right.
woman,
Yeah.
if an officer is stationed at their house, what woman is going to come forward and say that this is happening,
Right.
right? Like nothing would be done about it, even if someone did believe them,
Right.
right? So it's just a no-win situation here.
But I also
Mhm.
fear for Sophie because
Yes,
she's a,
Yes.
yes,
and
you,
honestly,
yeah.
Well,
like,
she's
yes, sorry. But yes, she's a girl. But what I feared too was the minute he told her, I'm gonna have men over for dinner, I was like, oh
yeah.
God, here we go.
That's what I was going to say, is that he mentions that later on, he mentions that he wants her to cook for, this group of men that are coming. I was like, oh my gosh. Like that's what I was fearing. They're going to pass her
And what
around,
else?
Yes, I
Yeah.
was
Right.
terrified, y'all. Terrified. Like I'm telling you, if it happens, don't need to warn me because I just don't think I can read it. But yeah, no, I
Yeah.
hate this moment. I hate all of this for Vianne. I hate that now she's going to be living in even more fear, right? Like more so than she's already living because of Daniel and just having to worry about this man. Like, oh, and there is one thing I did want to mention. He's an SS officer. And
Right.
I don't know what the Beck was called. Like, I don't remember like the kind of officer he was, but he was not an SS officer. And so this just kind of shows a difference in what was happening in the war, where like the SS
Mhm.
officers kind of took over and they,
Yeah.
like they were mentioned as these really cruel people. And here we're seeing it
Yeah.
firsthand with Vianne.
Right. Yeah,
Right.
Beck
Because
had
even,
mentioned that they were
yeah,
like more brutish, more cruel. And that's also something that he seemed to struggle with is the cruelty that they were enacting on people.
right. Because he compared the SS to the Gestapo,
Mhm.
right? Like on the same level as awful, brutish behavior.
Yeah, so that's the situation she finds herself in. So now we fast forward a little bit into November of 1942. And one day in Caribou, after picking up her rations, Vienne sees a bus arrive in town with Jewish people coming out. And Helene Ruel, which is one of her neighbors, actually the one that was giving her a hard time about Beck,
Mhm.
back in our last discussion, she comes out of one of the buses with her sons and she tries to get Vienne to take both her sons, but the oldest does not want to go. He says, Dad, Papa told me to take care of you. I'm not leaving. And so she says, please take her youngest son. And Vienne does. His name is John Georges. Probably saying that completely wrong. But Vienne agrees to take him home. And when she gets home, von Richter is there. And Vienne tells him that his mother died of tuberculosis, and so that's why she was bringing him home. And something that had been mentioned earlier is that apparently von Richter is like really a big germaphobe. Like anytime someone coughs, he's like, get out of the house. So it was clever of her to say this because then he says he demands that she take him to the orphanage and forbids him from staying in the house. So she tells Sophie to take Daniel into the house and lock up while she takes John Georges to the orphanage. But before they leave, von Richter tells her that they're going to be leaving tomorrow because they're going to occupy the rest of France. So anyway, she goes to the orphanage and she talks to Mother Superior, who agrees to hide John Georges. And Mother Superior then suggests helping some more children. And she kind of just tells Vienne that she's now going to be working at the orphanage part-time as a teacher, as a cover for her work helping to hide more Jewish children. And at first Vianne's like hesitant about it, but then she agrees to do it. So now she's going to be doing this. She's going to be hiding Jewish children at the orphanage and she'll be working part-time as a teacher for the orphanage.
I loved this moment. I did not love it for Helene, obviously, right? Like, and hers, but gosh, Vianne mentions it as a teacher. Like, she just wanted to protect her student,
Right.
because Helene's older son was the student that gets mentioned several times. Like, he's like, oh, those Nazi bastards, blah, blah, blah. That's what my dad says,
Yeah.
But she mentioned that as a teacher wanting to protect her student. And I was like, my heart immediately, because when I read his name, I was like, that's her student.
Yeah.
And I put myself in that position as a teacher.
Yeah.
Like, no, you're not going to touch one of my students.
Yep.
Like, and so, whatever I could have done in that moment to protect one of mine, like, that's what I would have done. And I was like, yes, like, I would have done the exact same thing. I know that wholeheartedly.
Yeah.
And so that just felt a moment of pride for Vianne because it's happening more and more, like where she's having to force herself to be that strong person.
Right.
And I was like,
Right.
from one teacher to like, I felt it. And I was like, yes, like that's a great moment of connection there. But then she gets faced with reality where Helene like pushes her younger son on her and she's like, I don't have his papers. Like, I want to do this, but I don't have his papers. Like, what the
Yeah.
fuck am I gonna
Yeah.
Yeah.
do?
Yeah.
And so, and then, enter, the officer, right? Von Richter, providing like Neener, right? Like,
Yeah.
I told you he was sick and now you're giving me the answer that I was looking for.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Like, what am I
And
going to
so
do
she
with him?
takes,
Yeah.
right. Yeah. She takes him to the orphanage and Mother Superior, like, Vianne, like, look at you. You're so cute. Here's your job, right? Like,
Yeah. If
here's
we're
what I'm
gonna
gonna
do this, we're gonna do it.
Yes. And so, Mother Superior is like, you've brought this kid to me. Now I'm going to require this of you. Right. And
Yeah.
I think on a level, Mother Superior knew exactly what Vianne needed. She knew that Vianne needed a purpose and she gave it to her.
Yeah.
Right.
And like I said, I think Mother Superior is that character that Vianne goes to where we can clearly see her growth from checkpoint to checkpoint.
Mm-hmm.
And this is another moment where Vianne just owns it. She's like, yes, I'm going to do this. Like, it's scary, but I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I do love that she's finally like taking a part in the war. Like that was another thing when I got to this point. I'm like, oh my goodness. Like, well, first of all, we kind of called it that this was like a section that was going to focus more on Vianne and what her part in the war was. So like I was really happy that she's finally kind of doing her own part. I mean, she started it with Daniel, right? Ari/Daniel.
Right.
She, by taking in Rachel's son, knowing that she could get killed for that. So like she's kind of started it then and like now she's like doing it now, even though it was kind of forced on her, she was just like, no, I have to help this child. I have to do that for her. And so I love that she's finally part of it. I love that she's finally kind of reacting instead of just like shrinking back whenever she sees, all of that. But to your point, Ethan, like she just reacted so quickly because it is her student. She feels that protectiveness over them. And I think all of our educators, or as educators, we feel that. And so I would have done the exact same thing as well. So I love it. This was a really great moment. I loved the moment between her and Mother Superior. I even talk about it later when we get to our underlying moments. But like this was such a great moment. I said, yes, girl, you are in the war now. You are helping. You are doing what you need to protect these children because, and I do love that that's what her role is now, right? Like I love that Vianne as a mom, because that has been her like identity too, is that she's the mom of the group. She's protecting Sophie, she's protecting Daniel, and now she's protecting this new kid. And so I love that that's the role she's going to play, is that she's going to be that protective mom for the children.
As
kind of
you're
like Mother
saying
Teresa.
that, well, as you're saying that, I love like this realization that I'm coming to, that each of their strongest traits that make them who they are how they are fighting in this war. Right. Like
That's
Isabelle
true.
is that feisty, fiery one that needs the action, right? And so that's how she's fighting. And then Vianne is that strong, matronly, motherly character that needs to care for others,
right?
And that's how she's fighting, right? Like I think that's such a cool thing.
Perfect.
Yeah, I love it. And so I was just so happy. But yeah, so I'm really looking forward to reading more on how Vianne's going to do that, because Mother Superior tells her, you're going to have to go door to door and pretty much take the children from their mothers and protect them. And so she's like, how do I even get any mother to do that? And, she's like, you give them a choice and you tell them what's going to happen if they don't.
Let them make the decision.
Yeah.
Yeah. So happy for Vianne that she's got this great purpose now to save the children. So we'll see what happens with that. But now we're back to Isabelle and Gaëtan, and they travel together to Madame Babineau's, who lives just outside of the Pyrenees Mountains, because Isabelle needs to take another batch of pilots across. So on their way there, they also learn that the rest of France is about to be occupied as well. But once they get there, Gaëtan actually tells her that he is going to be joining a group of partisans that are guerrillas making explosives and stealing bomb parts. So he is upping the ante on his resistance work. And so at that moment, also, Isabelle starts to realize why he's been so hesitant and afraid to be with her this whole time. Because now it's like really sinking in the danger that they both are in. This could be the last time they see each other because he's about to go off, and join that group. And she's going to continue doing her work, making these crossings. So I felt like this was another moment of growth for Isabelle to start to see the consequences of her actions or like the reality that they're in this war. So it was like a bittersweet moment, obviously, because they finally let themselves have this little sliver of light and hope by being together. But like it quickly had to end, starting to mature and grow and realize like the stakes that she's facing right now.
Yeah.
I'm worried about Isabel here. Because it seems to be a lot of foreshadowing that things could go wrong here very soon, right? They're amping, when I say they, Nazi Germany, amping up their security and search measures since the Germans know now that people are escaping across the Pyrenees, and not only across the Pyrenees, but also in other areas as well. That was mentioned. The Germans now have gotten wise to women's involvement and have begun arresting women just like they arrest men. The Nightingale has become a high priority for Nazi Germany, so they are being extra vigilant. And then this next batch of guys that she's supposed to take across the mountains, there's this prick that doesn't like to take orders from women.
Yeah.
And so like I'm worried about that. Like, is something going to go wrong across this journey because of him?
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Like that all of this is stacked up against Isabel at this point. So I'm a little worried for her going into the next section.
Well, and now that you mentioned that, like, I remember that I'm pretty sure I read, like, on some of the chapters from our last episode where there was an American that was giving her a hard time, but that she dealt with it.
Yeah.
Because she even said, like, oh, this has already happened, but it's been dealt with. And she even made the comment, said, oh, the Yanks, right? And so maybe this is another moment, because she even said, oh, we'll deal with it like we dealt with the other ones. But with all the foreshadowing that you are talking about, Ethan, like I can kind of see where that's going too, because you're starting to see all of these problems. Like, not only has she been warned twice, she's been warned multiple times, probably more than just the twice, right? And now she has to take this guy who doesn't take orders. Like, what if he is just, we already know what arrogance gets other people. Like, it gets them killed. So like, what if it gets this whole, new batch of people that are supposed to go to safety? Like, what if they get caught because of this guy's arrogance, because he refuses to listen to a woman who like she's already led 87 airmen to safety. Like, what is your deal?
Right.
Like, what? I can't stand people who feel like they can't take, not orders, but like who don't see women as equals. Like, I just cannot, I cannot deal with people like that.
Well, remember, we're in the 90s when like the picture of the housewife was like all women were expected to be.
True.
And like misogyny was much higher than it is now.
True.
So this isn't the first time she's dealt with a man who can't take orders from a woman. But yeah, it could get them caught. So, we'll see what happens in this crossing. Okay, so now we get back to Caribou and Vianne. She goes to Henry to ask him to help her falsify some papers for John George's. And he agrees to get her some blank papers, but he tells her that she's going to have to forge them herself. So as she's talking to Henry, she realizes that time when Isabelle was about to go to Paris, and she mistakenly assumed that she was just some lovesick girl running off to Paris to be with Henry. And she realizes in this moment that she misjudged her for that and starts to feel guilty about it. But anyway, a few days later, as Vianne is walking home from picking up their rations, Henry comes up next to her and gives her a baguette, and he secretly tells her, I forgot what his words were, but essentially that the baguette has a special filling. And so she takes that to understand that the papers that she asked for are inside of the baguette. And then it's so funny that this happens this way, because it takes me back to when Isabelle started doing her resistance work. Yeah. But when she continues walking home and she runs into von Richter, and he offers to carry her basket with this baguette inside of it.
Just like Beck.
Just like what happened when Isabelle was taking the tracks home for the first time. And Beck
the baguette
offered
is poking out of the basket too.
Basket. Yeah. But again, Vianne uses the fact that Ron Richter is a germaphobe against him. And she says that she caught the flu from John George's the other day and she forces herself to cough. And so he gets pissed and like shoves the basket back at her and was like, why didn't you tell me that? And that scares him off.
Well, because he noticed
So
that she was like being really weird.
yeah, yeah. And so that's when she decides like, oh, I'm going to fake being sick.
Like
To
he
get him off
even
my
tells her like
back.
you're breathing like a racehorse, madam. Like
Yeah.
what the
What's
what the
going
hell's
on
wrong
with
with
you?
you?
So anyway, at home later that night, she waits until she knows that Von Richter has fallen asleep. And she, by just the light of one candle, she starts to practice forging papers in her family Bible. And so once she finishes forging John George's documents, she realizes that she's going to have to figure out a system to keep these kids' real identities safe in case something happens to her, and their mothers come looking for them. They're not going to know what their false identities are. So this was so clever of her. She rips out 3 separate pages from her Bible. On one, she writes the boys' real names. On a second one, she writes their false names. And then on the third one, she writes down where they're being kept. And she decides that she's going to hide all of these papers in different locations just in case. So now we see her being clever, like doing this work for her way of helping in the resistance. What did you guys think about at this point?
Go ahead.
I think this part in particular is going to be very important later on. So I think this could be a point in Vianne's favor as to who the elderly woman would be, right? Like I think Julian's identity in some way or form is going to be the truth that needs to be revealed, right? Either about who his father could be or who he is, right? Because this forging of papers, like what if Julian is actually Daniel, right? Like, and she forged those papers. Like, I think there's a specific reason on why we're getting this system in particular, whether that be, for its intended purpose that families were able to reunite, that would be awesome. But if it was something more than that, I think it could be related to Julian later on down the line. I don't know. That's just a pure theory on my part. But I was really proud of Vianne in this moment because this is the moment where it sets in that she's like, nope, I've said this is what I'm going to do. Now I'm actually doing it, because I feel like at other points in the story, she would have rationalized a way to not do it. And she's not even giving herself the option anymore. And she also has some inner dialogue here with herself about how she sees her daughter Sophie, right? Like, I'm proud of her in that regard as well, because she's not just this protector over Sophie anymore. Like she still is, like she's still her mother, but she also is proud of Sophie in general because Sophie's willing to fight too. Like Sophie has that drive to want to save others. And I think Vianne is realizing that in her, and is sad that it come at the cost of Sophie's innocence as a child.
Right.
But she's still proud of her.
Yeah.
And so without actually saying that she's proud of her, like that's what her inner dialogue says of what she thinks about her daughter. So it's just a really good moment for Vianne.
Right.
It's funny that you mentioned the system that she created and you called it clever. When I was reading it, I thought it was foolish. And it's so funny that we just kind of thought in a different way. No. Hear me out. But first of all, I love that like her forging papers is the same as her dad, because her dad forges papers too. Yeah. So it's like, oh my God, like look at them. Anyways, I don't know. It was just a cute little like,
I thought that was
love
like
that.
father, like daughter.
Yeah. I was like, I love this moment. The only reason I thought it was foolish is because you're writing down the evidence of what you're doing and you're putting it inside a house of a man who like is cruel and brutal, and we've already kind of talked about some of the foreshadowing of what he could potentially do, and now she's writing all this evidence down of what she's doing. That was what I thought when she started doing that. Yes, I get the reasoning behind it, but I also think that's foolish because I don't think those people are going to make it. I mean, we know they're not going to make it. Like, we know what happens at those camps. We know what kind of, did some people survive the Nazi camps? Yes. No. What are they called? No, the
concentration camps.
Concentration camps.
They're calling them work camps right now in the book.
Do some people survive the concentration camps? Yes, but I just don't think a lot of people do. And so I get her wanting to reunite these families, but to me, it's a little foolish for her to write the evidence of what she's doing down with the man like Von Richter in her house. Not to
That's fair.
say that it's not clever as like a good plan, because it is, but it's also dangerous.
Yeah, it is totally dangerous. I
Yeah.
100% agree. It's very dangerous. But she even says that in her head, which is why she has three different lists,
Right.
right? And she
Right.
hides them in other areas. I still think it was incredibly risky. I 100% agree. But when she mentioned that, I was like, well, why is she numbering them all the same and it has like three different lists? It's because she intends to hide them. That made me feel a little bit better.
Right.
But to your point, I'm still incredibly worried because I do like, I think it's cool.
Right.
I think it's, but it's also really risky,
Yeah.
especially considering who's living in your house now as opposed to Beck.
Well, and I do love that she's finally like doing something for the war. And I love that she's doing this for the children, because a lot of these children are going to die without their parents. And, either they're going to be left behind because they're not after the the French born Jews yet, right? But they're going to die without their parents. Like, who's going to feed them? I mean, the parents can barely feed them. So I love that she's
Yeah.
doing that for them. And I love that she's finally kind of jumping into action. So I am so proud of Vianne here. Like, whenever I read the part about the Nightingale has sung, and how proud I was of Isabelle, like, I'm feeling the same amount of pride here. Like, I love that these sisters are doing something big in different ways. It's a little better.
Yeah.
Like what if, because is her name like minus Antoine, but like before she married was also Rosengal.
Yeah.
And
Right.
so
She's also the
what
Nightingale.
if, I was like, what if they also become known as codenamed like the Nightingale? And so it's when we say the Nightingale, it's collectively referring to both sisters. But
Yeah.
maybe that's why she also doesn't, whoever this elderly woman is, maybe that's also why she doesn't return, because she doesn't like want to think about differentiating between like whose heroics was more heroic,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Right.
Gosh, it's killing me that I don't know who this woman is. And we only have
I
10, what,
know.
9 more chapters left? 10 more chapters?
Nine
Nine
more,
more
yeah.
Yeah.
chapters.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, hopefully it'll be revealed soon. We'll see.
Yeah.
So I've been liking to pose a question at the end of our discussions here, because this is the end of this section. So my question to you guys at this point is, there is so much that happened to Vienne in this section, and we see that she has definitely had some growth throughout the section. It ends with her forging papers for a child, and this is only the beginning. We know she's going to do this for even more children, which is not something I would have seen coming from her at the beginning of this book,
Right.
even at the beginning of this section, right?
Yeah.
So like, what do you think was the turning point for Vienne? Out of all these different things that have happened to her in this section, what do you think was finally her turning point?
I wish I could say that it was Rachel and Sarah. I don't think that it was like I had originally theorized. Like I thought that it was going to be Rachel and Sarah being taken away to, a concentration camp, or maybe even being murdered, right? I think that's what started her on the journey, but I think ultimately her killing Beck was the turning point.
Interesting. I think it was her conversation with Mother Superior, because even before that, like, I think it was the conversation with Mother Superior, because even before that, like, whenever Helene was trying to like shove the kid into her arms, like, she didn't want to do it. She knew what happened to people who hid Jews. The only reason she took Daniel was because it was Rachel, like, that was her friend, and she knew that she had to protect Daniel, right? So I think that she was still pretty hesitant in being involved. If it wasn't for somebody that she loved and somebody that she knew, like Rachel, that's why she did it for Rachel, and why she killed Beck for Isabelle, because it was people that she knew and loved. But now having to do this for strangers and like a bigger cause, like, I still saw some of that hesitant, like, I still saw her being hesitant in that way. But after she talked to Mother Superior, she's like, well, if we're going to risk our lives, then we might as well risk it for more people, right? So I think that was her turning point there. What about you, Steph? What do you think?
I don't know that there was like a one point that like broke the camel's back, so to speak. I think it was just a culmination of all of these events happening in such quick succession,
Yeah.
Yeah.
that would break anybody.
Yeah.
And
Totally.
she had already started to show a little bit of resistance when she found out at the end of our last discussion that her friend was going to have to, wear that Star of David patch. So, I don't know that there was any one point that did it for her. Possibly that moment when she Beck in the back of the head with the shovel. She probably never would have predicted that she would do something like that at any point. So
Yeah.
that's huge,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, jury is out on what exactly killed him, but that definitely would have if not for the gunshot.
I know, right? Clever of Kristin Hannah again to keep us guessing.
Yeah.
even at a definitive point of death.
Right.
Like this guy is dead, but Isabelle shot him and Vianne hit him on the head at the same time.
Yeah.
Like, what are the odds?
If you hit somebody in the right spot in the back of your head, like you could kill them.
Oh, you're done.
Yeah.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
So.
And she said like his scalp was like coming off or something like that. Like,
right.
She hit him
really
good.
got him.
Yeah. He would have been a goner no matter what.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think that might have been it. And then definitely that conversation with Mother Superior where she encouraged her to like not just protect this child, to do more. And like she gave her a clear path for how to do that. And so I think she's definitely coming into her own power right now. And I'm glad to see it. It's awesome. All right, you guys. So that ends our discussion on chapters 21 through 30 of The Nightingale. So now we're going to move on to the segment we've been calling the underlined moments. So this is where we discuss our favorite quotes and moments from this section. So to kick us off, I'll start with, I only have one quote this time around, but it was actually from the conversation that Vianne had with Mother Superior when she was at the orphanage. We're deciding to do this work for the children. So this is at the end of chapter 29. So she's talking to Mother Superior and it says, Mother Superior, lean close. I hear one of their awful stormtroopers is billeted at your house. You realize this puts you and Sophie at a terrible risk. And then Vianne says, of course, but how can I let her believe that it's all right to do? Nothing in times such as these. So that was just a really proud moment for me. And Vianne, she's partially doing this for Sophie, to show her that this is not okay and it's not okay to not do anything about it. And so she's doing something about it in her own way, the only way that she can. So that was my favorite quote from this section. And then I've got two favorite moments from this section. So my first is from chapter 22 when Vianne is telling Rachel to hide in the cellar. This is before they try to make it across that checkpoint, but she tells her that Isabelle had prepared for this, and at first she thought she was being foolish by putting all these provisions in that trunk in the cellar, but now she's like, but this is what she was preparing for, and I'm glad that she did. You should hide in my cellar. So like I'm loving seeing her starting to see her sister Isabelle in a different light. Now realizing what she's been doing this whole time has been righteous and she hasn't been being foolish. And then along that same path, my second favorite moment was in chapter 30. And this is when she's talking to Henry about forging documents for John George's. And during this conversation in her inner monologue, she starts to realize that back when Isabelle was about to move to Paris, she mistakenly thought that Isabelle was just being foolish and, in love with Henry. And she realized that no, she was doing this to do work for the resistance. And she started to feel guilty for misjudging her sister in that moment. And like shortly after that, she starts her work for the orphanage and forging papers. So, I just thought that was a really great moment for her character growth, in starting to be more like Isabelle, more like her dad, who are both working for the resistance and doing something against the Germans instead of just like keeping her head down and trying to stay out of trouble.
Right. Well, I have a couple of fave quotes and a couple of fave moments from this section. And I guess when I say fave quotes, I really mean like quotes that made me think and like appreciate character development here. And the first one is from Sophie talking to her mother, right? Because Vianne is telling her, like what all they have to do to make sure that, Daniel is safe and that, basically of her new outlook that she's taking on this war and her stance in it, right? And so Sophie tells Vianne, good for you, Mom. Like, thank you for finally doing this, pretty much. And I think it's very telling of a character development when like the child is proud of their parent, and it echoes the same moment that Isabel had with their father, right? Because their father tells, "Look, good for you, Isabel.
Yeah.
Good for you, Mom." It's the same line, just
Mhm.
swap out the names. So I think it's a really cool moment. And then I also pointed out the same quote from Mother Superior to and Vianne, right? Like, but how can I let her believe it's all right to do nothing in times such as these? I love this moment because that is definitive proof of how Vianne has changed.
Mhm.
Like that is very, very telling, because Vianne wouldn't have admitted anything was wrong before.
Right.
But now this is a moment where she clearly states it and she recognizes it for what it is. And then the moments that really stuck out to me in this section, like I said, I don't love the fact that Beck has stopped breathing, but I do love that that moment marked a transition between the sisters. One, just their relationship overall, but like what you were saying, Steph, like this is a moment where Vianne realizes that Isabel has been more involved in this whole thing than what she ever could have thought of, right? And she felt guilty for having believed so easily the worst in her sister, or at least the worst that she perceived of her sister. And so it was a humbling moment for Vianne. To Vianne's obvious growth here, like I've said before, like we've all said before, this is a huge section for Vianne.
Mm-hmm.
And that moment in particular where she takes the shovel and hits Beck over the head with it, right? Like that's huge. This also marks a moment for Isabel's grasp on reality. Like I said before, I think up until this point, she has thought she's invincible, right? She's had all these early successes with getting these people across the Pyrenees Mountains. She's had these lucky moments, right? That she hasn't really had to have ingenuity for. Like it just happened to be fate that she ended up being okay.
Yeah.
And so where she got shot and realized that she shouldn't have brought this person into Vianne's home, marking suspicion on her, like that's a moment for growth for Isabel, where she's like, oh no, I'm not invincible. And oh, my consequences do have actions, not just for me, but for other people.
Yeah.
My next favorite moment is Vianne. I don't like this, but she finally gets her hands dirty, so to speak, because she's helping these children.
Yeah.
This is a moment, like I said before, like I've fallen in love with Kristin Hannah's writing here, because she keeps us on our toes as to who this elderly woman could be. All signs still point to Isabel to me. Like it's still very strongly in Isabel's favor, but it still could be Vianne.
Yeah.
And not even the definitive moment of Beck dying could help give us insight as to who this elderly woman is.
Yeah.
Right. And now both sisters are helping with the resistance. Vianne is helping with the children and Isabel's helping with soldiers. So they're both helping.
Yeah.
Like, who is it?
Right. And I just thought about so last time we talked about how the older woman in 1995 mentioned something about the man that I killed, and both of them claimed this kill.
Claimed that they killed.
Yeah.
So,
yes. That's what I'm saying.
So yeah, that's so good.
All right. So for me, some quotes that really stood out to me were chapter 21. So when we left off our last episode, we were just getting the very start of Isabel's journey where, she completes her first mission. She gets to use the code the Nightingale has sung, and it's like a huge proud moment. And then we start off the new section with how many people she's actually helped. And so I really just wanted to bring that one little quote out. And that's 87 airmen you've brought us in the past 8 months, Isabel. Like, holy crap. She has saved 87 people, y'all, in 8 months. Like, and I can understand why she doesn't want to stop. I can understand that she was like, no, I can help more. I can help more. Like, they're fighting for us. They're fighting to get France back. Like, I need to help more. So like, that was one of my favorite quotes. Loved it. Loved how it transitioned from the end of her first mission to, wow, now you've saved 87 people. Like, how amazing. The other quote that I really loved was chapter 29 with Vianne and Mother Superior. And I've mentioned this already before, but like, she tells Vianne, you are the leader of this now. And if we are risking our lives for one child, we may as well try to save more. And I'm just like, I mean, duh, right? Like, she's already risking her life for Daniel. She's risking her life and now risking Mother Superior's life for Jean-Georges, right? So why not try to save more kids in the process? Like, and then she's just like, here, you're the leader now. And so like really kind of making her grow into that moment where it's like, no, you're going to do this and we're going to do this together, but you're going to be in charge of it. And so loved that moment. That's what I'm telling you. That's where I think Vianne's turning point is, right? So, well, that's just my thought. The other moments, so when it comes to moments like these two, I don't want to use the word favorite, but like I wanted to bring up this moment because it made me really incredibly emotional. And it was whenever Sarah was shot, right? And so she it says it here, it says Sarah lifted her head. Did we make it across the frontier? We did, Rachel said. We did. We're all safe now. I was brave, Sarah said, wasn't I? And I was just like, ugh.
You're gonna make me cry.
I know, I'm about to cry too. And it was just it was just one of those moments where like she was there for her daughter to give her peace as she was dying, right? And I was just like,
oh God,
what more could you do for your kid as they're dying? Like, anyways, it was just a really...
Yes, these are impactful moments, not fave moments.
Yes, very impactful moments. And then, like, after that happens, you know, she even says, like, tell Sophie. And then I lost it after that. I completely lost it when she said that. I was just like, she didn't even get to finish her statement to Sophie, right? And especially after we had just finished talking about, like, how fused together their friendship was. And so just... It was a very rough little section to read, but it was just very, like you said, impactful. The other one, funny, we end up with the same moment again. So the three of us chose the same moment again, where it was, you know, Vianne talking to Mother Superior, and she goes, of course, but how can I let her believe it's all right to do nothing in times such as these? And like that really showed me, we've already talked about her growth, so I'm not going to harp on that again, but I love that, you know, Isabelle was that perfect person for Sophie before, where she was telling her, don't accept, you know, what's happening. Don't be okay with what's happening around us. And now finally Vianne's the one telling her that. Finally, it's Vianne role modeling that to her daughter, where it's like, don't accept what we're, you know, what's happening. Like, it's not okay that this is happening to us. And, you know, we have to show her that we can stand up to these people. And so I love that it's finally switched out. That has finally switched over to Vianne and not Isabelle anymore. So really love that moment.
I hadn't made that connection that Isabelle was role modeling that for Sophie first, and now Vianne is. Yeah. I love that.
That's awesome. And that's connection. Where you can see a lot of that growth too. Like you see that with Vianne. It's like now she's finally being that person that her daughter needs her to be. So.
Love it.
All right. So, all right, book friends, that was our deep dive on chapters 21 through 30 of the Nightingale. And next week we are going to our final episode where we are going to discuss chapters 31 through 39. It has been a journey, y'all. Like, man. Yes, it has been a journey. I love this book so much. So I cannot wait to see what happens in the last 9 chapters. But be sure to interact with us, y'all, on social media. We are Books Between Friends Pod on all platforms. Be on the lookout for our clips, and please join us in a discussion on our comments. If you're enjoying this, you're enjoying our podcast, you're enjoying our discussion, please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts and help our podcast grow. We would love to hear from our book friends. And a special shout out to Cascade 13, who left us 5 stars on our podcast. And she wrote, I don't have reader friends around me to nerd out on books, so I do it here. And I love to hear that, because that's exactly what one of our...
Cascade 13. That's so awesome.
That is our goal.
It was our goal. Yeah. We want to be able to just talk books with people. Like, we want our fellow book nerds to just join us. Like, we just love it. I mean, you saw in the beginning of our podcast, we could not stop talking about Third in Glass. Like, that's exactly what we'd love to do. So I love to hear that other people are doing it along with us. So leave us some reviews, guys. Thank you.
All right, you guys. So next time, tensions rise and the risks are greater than ever. Join us as we unpack the courage and choices that shape what comes next. That's a wrap for Books Between Friends today. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you in the next chapter.